fed to the machines by machines, which is quite eye-opening and enlightening, because that's how humanity developed its intelligence, right? I really didn't have to figure out theory of relativity to understand the rest of physics. It was, figured out for me, if you want, right? Number two is the idea of agents and how AI is going to be prompting AI without humans, leading to cycles that we see now with my new favorite, because you have a favorite every 4 hours, Alpha Evolve, right? And the idea that you can have a self-developing AI, something that figures its own mistakes out and continues to iterate until it finds something. And then, of course, one of my favorites of 2025 is DeepSeek, and how we realized, that we can actually do the same job with much less. Imad Mushtaq, who is we're all a big fan of, I believe, has done that with, with his work at Stability for a very long time. The idea of shrinking the models to the point where it becomes shocking, really. And so when you add those together, you start to see that if I can shrink a model so it doesn't absorb all of the words in energy, and if I can allow it to self-develop and self-develop information to learn from, and then allow it to talk with itself through agents and do things without humans, then where the ball is going to be is likely going to be a lot better than we are today, right? So the one thing we all need to agree is it is not a question of if we're going to see improvements, it's a question of how fast and when those improvements will lead us to a point where humanity is not in the lead.
So he touches on a lot of things there: synthetic data, self-improving AI, and how the cost of intelligence is plummeting. But his main point is that you need to be looking ahead, where the ball is going to be, not where the ball currently is. And in this next clip, he goes even deeper into why AI is ultimately going to take control and why humans will willingly hand it over.
We're starting to see the speed of this accelerate, and the biggest interesting inflection point we haven't seen yet is self-iterating, self-improving, the alpha evolve of it all, where AI is coding itself and becoming more and more capable. And will this ultimately lead to something that is far more intelligent than any human being? And then is it 1,000 times more intelligent? Is it 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000 times more intelligent? How do you think about that, Mo?
I think it's irrelevant how much more intelligent it becomes. I think we all know that if you've ever worked with someone who's 50 IQ points more than you, that they will probably hold the keys to the fort. It doesn't take a lot more intelligence relatively to be able to assume a leadership position. And humanity will hand over the fort to AI. Either way, even if AI is just smarter than us at war gaming, we're going to, which it is, by the way, we're going to hand over the fort to AI. If it's smarter than us at protein folding, nobody's going to do a PhD project to fold proteins anymore. We're just going to go and use AlphaFold. And I think the reality is only the very few remaining things require artificial super intelligence, so that it beats us in everything, so that we sort of bow and say, okay, yeah, you're the boss.
So while I definitely agree with Mo here, Cutler does respond with a reasonable counter. He agrees that AI will eventually surpass human intelligence, but he says what people are missing is that humans are also being augmented, and maybe even just as fast. Check this out.
We have no idea what the upper limit of human brains linked together in group flow is, let alone at the same time as the AI is developing. You and I are writing about it, Peter. We're watching BCI develop. We're watching non-invasive things develop. We're watching Meta be able to read brain thoughts inside your brain through facial signals. These are all with AI. But my point is that everybody's talking about this stuff as if it's happening separately from everything else that's happening. And on the human augmentation side, we are seeing neuroscience and the like has been accelerating exponentially since the 1990s when George Bush declared it the decade of the brain, and it hasn't stopped. Though the same things that are happening in AI are happening sort of on the human side of the equation. And here's the second point off of that. It doesn't matter to me whether we're talking about the AI invasion or climate change or plastics in the ocean or take your pick, because the solution to all of these things is the same. We humans have to learn how to cooperate at scale, probably cooperate with each other and with AI at scale, or we're going to die. Probably in the next 20 years. That's what all this is telling us.
So Mo actually agrees with this, and even further elaborates on his point, as you're about to see. This is where the conversation starts to get really interesting and deep. Take a look.
If I were to share with you some of what I wrote today, it took me probably several weeks to let it simmer and then write it, and then it would take me an hour to explain it to you. When we run digital intelligences, we run them in parallel. We tell them all to go play at Atari or whatever, and then we just average the weights literally in seconds. We get a scaled digital intelligence. And when you said that what we're looking for is a way to scale human cooperation, that is absolutely the answer. Because you know what? I think, and I spoke about that with Peter when we were lost in LA, that we're hitting the potential of total abundance. Total abundance meaning almost godlike, like cure my daughter and it's done. Make me an apple and it's done, right? We could hit that in 5, 10, 15, 20 years time if we don't destroy ourselves, right? And so basically the real challenge we have as humanity is, why are we freaking competing? Like this is CERN quality challenge. This is basically, let's let all of humanity cooperate. Let's all build one particle accelerator. Let's all learn from it. Let's all distribute the benefits to everyone and stop competing. But that's not happening.
So yeah, why are we competing? That's the question I think a lot of people are asking. I mean, we're talking about a technology here that has the potential to either destroy us or transcend us, for lack of a better word. And yet we're blindly rushing towards making it as powerful as possible with virtually no plan in place. Now, this is where they start talking about human nature, and Mo goes deep into what it means to be human and what our purpose is. He ties this back to why our modern world is fundamentally sick and why it's going to be a serious challenge to get to the utopian future we're all hoping for.
I think the challenge really truly is we've prioritized our entertainment over the years above true reflection. And if you take anything from video games to science fiction movies to whatever, they've all painted that dystopian scenario, which I have to say is very unlikely when you really think about it. Because if AI gets to the point where they are capable of destroying us that easily, we are so freaking irrelevant that they probably wouldn't even bother. I mean, think about it. I think it was Trey or Hugo Garis. One I don't remember who said the more likely scenario is that they kill us because they're not aware of our presence, or like when you hit an ant hill while you're walking, right? But if you really want to optimize the human, sort of the gain function that we need to aim for, if I'd look forward, I'd look to Star Trek. And if I'd look backward, I'd look to the caveman and woman years, right? And it's actually quite interesting because when you mention about, when you mention how governed we are by greed and fear and our egos and all of that negativity, it is actually because we want to survive. And believe it or not, survival could be, I'm not really sure if 20 million is enough. I need to gain 20 more just in case something happens. Or if it's a survival of the ego. It's like if I have 200 million or 2 billion or 20 billion or whatever, and the other has 21 billion, like what the fuck is wrong with me? Okay. And that unfortunately is what plagues our current modern world. Now, the reality is, if you really think about humanity, the purpose of humanity since the caveman and women years was to live. Okay. And for some strange reason, we've optimized so much to achieve that objective and forgot that this was the objective. Right. So, again, as friends off the camera, we speak about those things quite a bit. The question of what, you go through seasons in your life, and there is a season where you want to maximize, and a season where you want to build, and a season where you want to look attractive in your middle age, or whatever crazy stuff that we have. But eventually there is a season where you go like, okay, so I've now lived and experienced so much. What have I missed? Have I actually lived any of that? And believe it or not, as scary as it looks to have no job to go to in the morning, if society provided, then you'll go back to a much safer caveman woman scenario where, there are no threats, there are no famines. You just really live, enjoy life, connect, ponder, reflect, explore, which I know is very difficult for a lot of people. I do it for the first 3 hours of every day. It's pure joy, right? To sit really with your curiosity, if you want. And then if you push all the way forward into Star Trek, that's sort of what the Enterprise is doing at universal scale, right? It was basically, let's go and explore. Now that we don't really have to struggle with all of the wars and famine and shit that we've created on Earth, now we can actually open up and create connections, not just with humans, but with every living being.
So I honestly think he's spot on here. It does truly feel like we've lost our way in a sense, and have become extremely distracted by the artificial and digital world we've created. This is why Mo is anticipating a massive catastrophe within the next few years. And in this final clip, he explains exactly what that might look like and why it might actually be a good thing. Take a look.
If the US at any point in time is convinced that this mad arms race to win intelligence supremacy is one that is going to lead to some harm to everyone in the world, they will stop. And if they will stop competing, they will continue to develop, but they start cooperating. And if they're convinced that it will lead to an assured prosperity, that nobody's going to stab them in the back, that everyone is going to be enjoying a life that is very different for all of us, but full of prosperity for all of us, then they will stop. They will continue to develop the technology, but they will stop competing. And unfortunately, if you look back in history, we're not able to guess those possibilities like a good applied mathematician on a game board. We have to hit them like face on. Like everyone in the world knew that a pandemic was coming. Everyone, right? Everyone who at least studied virology. Okay, but it had to hit us in the face so that everyone stops. Okay, everyone knows that trade wars are going to hurt everyone. But we have to put them out there and then fight through them and then eventually get to something. And it's sad. I mean, perhaps what we are doing, and I've dedicated probably the last 6-7 years of my life to, is to say we really don't have to hit our face against it. It's a simple game theory, right? Understand that a prisoner's dilemma where we are competing endlessly is going to end badly. Can we please stop?
Yeah, we already know it's tit for tat, right? Like you want the other strategy. You want it doesn't matter how many AIs we put on that. It's the same thing with flow and imaginary creativity. Like these problems have been solved. We know these answers. This isn't like it's not like we have to unify gravity and relativity. That's a hard problem. These are not.
So Mo, I wish we were that rational, and I wish we were that compelled for our optimization function being all of humanity. It's not. And so I go back to
we're going to get a drastic event within the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
A drastic event that on one side will hit us very badly economically, or on the other side will hit our fears very much, or sadly on the worst side may kill quite a few million people. Right, and you could have a range of a hacker that simply instead of attacking a physical place, switching off the internet or the power grid somewhere where the power grid is needed for life, or you could on the other extreme get a hack into a bank, or an evil war that goes out of control, or machines that turn on to their makers, or there will be some very big news headline. As always, there will be it will last for 12 to 13 days before we start to talk about some kind of a pop star. But then behind closed doors, I think decision makers will wake up.
So once again, I think he is spot on here. Typically, it takes some big disaster or catastrophe for people to start waking up. But when we're talking about something as powerful as AI, if we wait for that bad thing to happen before implementing a plan, it might simply be too late. I'm not trying to be a doomer or anything, and I don't think Mo considers himself as a doomer either. But I do honestly think we're going to see a massive catastrophe very soon, as he predicts. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Are you siding more with Stephen Cutler here, who thinks we are way overhyping this, or Mo Gaudet, who basically says we're sleepwalking into disaster? Either way, the conversation around AI is shifting and fast. And if we don't start paying attention now, we might not get a second chance. So drop your thoughts below. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy these type of breakdowns. And as always, I'll be catching you guys in the next one.
I used to think AI in the terminal was kind of meaningless. Boy, was I wrong. When does my wildcard cert
is effectively infinite, but I would say that the harm is probably 10 times. It's a bigger infinity. And the question of how we are going to get to a place where we can leverage the obvious power that is here to do good.
Due to AI and a changing global order, the world is in the middle of the greatest period of change ever, but because we're in the middle of it, it is nearly impossible for us to accurately see what's going on. We are in the fog of war. While the world panics over job loss and killer robots, the real dangers are creeping in quietly and changing us in ways most people do not even notice. America and China are locked in a Cold War, and AI isn't just going to take people's jobs. For many, it will take their entire identity. It's already shaping what we believe, how we connect, and even what we value. Today's guest is issuing a very strong warning. His name is Mo Gaudet, and he's the former chief business officer at Google X, best-selling author of the AI book Scary Smart, and one of the only people who truly understands both how AI works and what it's doing to us. In this conversation, Mo exposes how the American perspective is blinding us to China's true might, how AI is already changing everything, and how we can learn to navigate the rise of the machines well. Not look away. Here is Mo Gaudet. I think of AI like a magic genie that can grant all of our wishes. The problem is, the lesson of every magic genie story is be careful what you wish for. What do you think we have to watch out for with AI?
AI is a genie that has no polarity. It doesn't want to do good. It doesn't want to do evil. It wants to do exactly what we tell it to do. And there is a non-zero possibility. Some people say 10 to 20%. Elon Musk's view. Elon Musk says 50%, and so on. A possibility that we ever face an existential risk of AI. Think about it. 10 to 20% is Russian roulette odds. This is
you're saying the chills. That's crazy.
Yeah, you wouldn't stand in front of the barrel at 10 to 20%, right? But my issue is that chronologically we wouldn't get there. My issue is that I think we have more urgent and quite crippling effects of human greed, human morality. Let's put it this way. I think the immediate negative impact of AI is going to be human morality using it for the wrong reasons. So they're going to make the wrong wish. Is my challenge, I think. And in my current writing in Alive, I basically try to explain that I'm almost convinced that there is a short-term dystopia that's upon us on the way to utopia, and that unfortunately the short-term dystopia is not reversible. So we're going to have to struggle with a bit of it, but it can be reduced in intensity and it can be shortened in time and duration. But that it's only wise to start preparing, and that 100% of the short-term dystopia is not the result of AI. It's the result of the morality of humanity in the age of the rise of the machines.
All right, give me some specifics. What specifically are we going to point AI at that will become dystopian?
So I call them face RIPs, so just an acronym to try and remember. I don't say them in that order, but let's just quickly list them. F is freedom. We're going to redefine freedom. A is accountability. C is human connection or connectedness in general. E is economics. R is reality and our perception of reality at large. I is the entire process of innovation and intelligence itself and where we fit within that. And P is the most critical of all of them, which is the redefinition of power. Right, and if you want to understand them reasonably well, they're better understood in pairs, right? So you can start with the easier ones, the I and the E, if you want, the redefinition of intelligence and innovation, and how that impacts on the redefinition of economics. I think we understand that with AGI, depends on how you define it. It really doesn't matter because my AGI has already happened. AI is definitely smarter than I am, so I'm done, right? I don't care what the rest of humanity defines it at. That it's their moment. My moment has come. So if we agree that AGI is happening in a year, this year, next year, in a few years, it doesn't really matter. Then, as you and I both know, and we've been talking about several times, that means that the toughest jobs will be given to the smartest person, and the smartest person will be a machine, which basically will lead to two very significant shifts in our economics. One shift that basically moves the wealth upwards. So there is going to be a massive concentration of wealth for those who invest in the right places, and most importantly, for those who own the platforms. I mean, it's not a secret if you look at the history of humanity that, if you look at the best hunter in the hunter-gatherer tribe, could probably feed the tribe for a week longer than the second best hunter. And in return, he got the favor of more than one mate. That's the maximum wealth that he could create. But the best farmer could feed the tribe for a full season, if you want. And as a result, became a landlord and had estates and wealth and so on. The best industrialist became a millionaire in the 1900s. The best information technologist became a billionaire in the current era. And when you really think about it, the difference between them is automation. And automation, if you want, is the automation of a hunter is a spear, but the automation of the farmer is the land, right? The soil. Okay, most of the work is not done by the farmer; it's done by the soil. And when you look at the people who are currently building the platform AIs, they will own the soil, the digital soil, or the intelligence soil, if you want. And so they will, aggregate massive amounts of wealth. There will be a trillionaire before the 2030s for sure, right? The problem is in that process there is almost full poverty for everyone else. We call it UBI, but UBI really is not something that we've seen worked in history before. And UBI will come with demands, will come with authority, will come with choices. It can be very utopian in the long term, but it would be very dystopian until it's fully implemented, if you want. And even when it's implemented in the long term, it would impact on human purpose, human engagement, value, appreciation, and so on. So think about it this way: you're getting a dichotomy, or sort of an arbitrage between some people becoming incredibly rich to the point where money means nothing at all, and the majority becoming incredibly poor, where they're basically obedient to be fed. And
now, is that because, Mo, you think that they're going to lose their jobs? Going back to the statement you made, that the smartest people will get the hardest jobs. Okay. Yeah, job loss is something that maybe not now. It's very interesting to go through these different things, but I do want to really dive into mechanistically how that's going to work. In fact, one thing I want to do before we keep going, and this is something that largely I've gotten distilled from you, is what I call setting the table for what's about to happen. So again, to plant the flag, you and I share a belief, and this is one of the reasons I like talking to you so much, is that, hey, this all ends in utopia, but we go through this brutal interim process that I don't think people understand how scary this is going to get. So setting the table for that, you've got the rate of change is the thing that I think people are just not paying enough attention to. Everybody can wrap their heads around this thing gets smarter than me, but they're not understanding how fast it's happening. So if I'm not mistaken, and I know I'm very close if this isn't exactly correct, AI doubles in power every 5.7 months. So
yeah, I calculated 5.9. So yeah.
Okay, I'm just like crazy count. So in less than 6 months, so it's going to double in power twice in a year. That is a rate of change that I think people are going to struggle with. Now, transitional moments always cause disruption. There's a certain rate of change that humans can deal with, but AI exceeds, at least from where I'm sitting, the rate of change that we can handle. And given that, things begin to spiral out of control. And you said something that I think is, I agree with, which is that AI will have the power of God. So with those, one, do you disagree with any of that?
Need a professional logo for your business? I've used Turbo Logo Maker to create one for my startup.
No, I don't. I just want to double down on it and say that it's at 5.7 or 5.9 months in the absence of new innovation. So you have to imagine that for
that it's going to break free and go even faster.
100%. If quantum computing is solved, or if you find a completely new algorithm, or if AI start to teach each other rather than wanting us to teach them, if synthetic data becomes much easier to attain, and so on and so forth, there are so many. I mean, DeepSeek was just a blow for everyone. Like a week before, I think, was Stargate, $500 billion, and then DeepSeek comes out and says we did it, I don't know for how much, like 33 times less than ChatGPT 4 or something like that. And it's not, it doesn't matter because I heard your original analysis on DeepSeek and that they were cheating a little, and I agree, but they're cheating with the same resources that OpenAI had. OpenAI could have taught their model the same way. Actually, as a matter of fact, they would have been more qualified to teach their model the same way, and yet they were continuously focused on on more and more and more resources, more and more compute, $500 billion worth. And then suddenly you wake up and you go like, no, I don't need to do that. I can reinvent something in the learning model and it will give me massive improvements. And of course, most people at the time would go like, oh, so NVIDIA is going to go down the drain, and what will OpenAI do? They'll invest the $500 billion in the stuff that they now found. So suddenly you're doing it 33 times cheaper, but using 10 times more investment, and there you go. It's going to accelerate even more and more. And it's hitting from every side, Tom. Like the algorithms are improving. The AI itself with its math abilities, with its programming abilities, is going to be the next developer. So most of the big CEOs will talk about AI will be the best developer on the planet by the end of 2025. They don't talk about 2026 when the next AI beats that best developer on the planet. They can build stuff that we cannot even comprehend. And I think the pace of change. I got exhausted to try and explain this to people because you really have to be an insider of tech to understand the meaning of the exponential function. If you live in any other industry, you're much more in the linear trends. And this is not even exponential. This is not even double exponential. This is probably quadruple exponential in the absence of breakthroughs. It is just unbelievable. I've never lived in something so fast, ever.
Okay, so looking at that, and I don't know if you'd want to apply this directly to the letters or not, but I'm very curious when you think about, okay, AI is moving at a rate that humans are not able to comprehend, which then obviously they're not able to deal with this. What do humans do in the face of that level of disruption? Is there anything in history that you look to say, okay, this predicts how the human part of this equation is going to react?
So the only sad reality of humanity is that something has to break for us to react, right? You and I and everyone who had a tiny bit of a brain could have told you in 1999 that a pandemic is possible, right? It's really not rocket science at all. We had SARS, we had swine flu, we had so many, and then exactly 100 years after Spanish flu, 1920 to 2020, you get a few cases which I wrote about in Scary Smart. The idea of not reacting. If we had reacted after 20 cases, there would have never been COVID. But we had to wait, right, until it hits us in the face, and then we go like, ooh, right? Whether it's conspiracy or not, whether COVID is manufactured or not, is irrelevant. The relevance is we wait until it hits us in the face. Right, and so something's bound to hit us in the face. I hope it's the lighter side, right? But a massive hack of some kind of security, and I don't know how to say this without upsetting people. Some things have been hitting us in the face. In the wars of 2024, there was so much killing done by machines, right? In today's budgets, there is so much investment in autonomous weapons. And if you've ever searched on YouTube around defense conferences, the level of bragging that defense manufacturers are, they're bragging about, look, this is how I'm going to kill now from now on. And they throw a little drone in the air that flies all the way to a test dummy and shoots it in the head, right? And I don't know when humanity wakes up. I honestly don't. I mean, in a very interesting way, I think your question is probably the best question ever, which is what do you do to prepare for this? And in Alive, I write a section, which I actually feared that people will be upset with, but it got a lot of support. I called it a late stage diagnosis, right? Which basically is an analogy between, a doctor who finds that his patient is diagnosed with a late stage disease, and what we're going through. And people normally ask me, how do you speak about this so calmly, and how do you continue to focus on trying to do the best that you can? It's because that's what the best doctors will do. They'll simply sit you down and say, look, we found this, right? But that doesn't count as a death sentence, right? This basically is to tell you that you need to wake up, you need to change your lifestyle, right? You need to take certain measures, and there will be no problem, right? And I think the challenge is that humanity is not taking those measures. We're still entering
how do we get that? How do we get that diagnosis to people? To me, it seems self-evident that what's going to happen is people are going to start losing their jobs. They're going to squawk. They understand political machinations, so they're going to protest. They're going to make demands of the government. And the question that I have is, what demands will they make, and how will we play that out? And so I'm curious, going to the last one, the P in all of this, power, that feels to me like the one to zoom in on. I don't know how you mean power, but I think there's going to be a great power struggle between humans, what I call the New Puritan movement, and technologists, what some people call transhumanists. For some reason, I hate that phrase, but that feels like that's what the collision is going to happen. It's going to be born of people losing their jobs. It's going to play out as tax the rich. And when you get into these hyper-populist moments where the economy is going south, and whether GDP skyrockets or not through robotics, through AI, that won't matter. If at the individual level, people do not get meaning, purpose, and dignity out of their work. And so that feels like a flashpoint. And that flashpoint feels like it's, 24 months away. It's not distant future.
Exactly. It's shocking, isn't it? But nobody's talking about it, right? I have good news to start, because we don't want to just, talk about the doom side. In the way you describe it, there is actually an interesting element that rarely is spoken about, right? All of the productivity gains mean nothing if there is no consumer purchasing power to buy it, right? Because at the end of the day, if you take all of the wealth and concentrate it in the hands of very few, they'll buy Ferraris only, they're not going to buy Fiats, right? And accordingly, there is no business to create anything at all. So for AI to exist and do the work, someone has to have the purchasing power to buy this. So if you take the US economy, I don't remember last year, but it's regularly around 62% is consumption. It's not production that creates the GDP. And so if you take away the 62%, you take away the entire economy. And so you have to understand that the loss of jobs is going to have to be resolved somehow. Purpose and meaning, these are interesting topics that are philosophically we can talk about, but from an economic point of view, okay, you have to keep people alive. Otherwise, you have no reason to compete, right? You have no reason to create or produce. So there's good news there. The issue here is that it doesn't take a lot of AI intelligence to describe that. A normal economist with simple economic degree, economics degree will tell you that you need the consumption side. Now we know this, but nobody's doing anything about it. Okay, nobody's doing anything about it, not because it cannot be resolved, but because nobody assumes the responsibility that this is their debt. Okay, the payment of humans through work has been outsourced to the capitalist, not the government. And so the government does not understand what it takes to pay humans, because that's communism. Let's not do that, right? Or socialism at its best assumption, right? And so the idea here is that at a very deep ideology, we are on one side, the people that need to jump in and engage are not even allowing themselves to lose their positions, because if they mention that they're in the wrong camp, and the capitalists are doing what they know very well, which is take the money away, make us more profitable, the economy will find a way. Not at that scale of transition. Okay? The economy will need to find intervention to find that. Now, so the good news is, the bad news is, unfortunately, we're going to hit a very rough patch before we start fixing it. But the good news is that we saw with furloughs and government incentives and so on during COVID, that governments are possibly capable of doing this with a lot of money printing, which destroys the economy for a while, but eventually we'll figure something out, right? The struggle is the struggle with power that you mentioned. So we have a diversion of power that's never happened in history before. Power normally aggregated to the top. Okay, and what you're going to see with artificial intelligence or intelligence at large. I mean, think about it this way. You and I, before we recorded, were talking about how we're using AI to become more intelligent. The way I look at it is now I go to my AI and I borrow 40 to 50 IQ points, right? And you and I know that if you've ever worked with someone who's 40 IQ points more than you, that is staggering. That is an incredible amount of compute, right? And so I can now borrow this at 8 a.m. every month. It's just incredible. Huh? So those who will borrow intelligence will become more powerful. That's the reality. The problem is, as I said, those who own the platforms, those who own the edge in the Cold War, in the arms race to AI, will at some point will aggregate so much power that it actually becomes uninteresting to give it to the rest of us. Okay, and that includes you and I, by the way. So middle class, upper top class, lower top class, whatever. It doesn't matter. So you have to imagine, and I use a freakish example. Huh? The first person that completely augments their brain with AI will immediately make sure that nobody else gets this, because it's if I promote you to the position of God, why would you make other gods? It's as simple as that. Okay, and so and of course you can take that at a nation level, at a company level, at a team level, whatever. So this is where the Cold War is taking us. Massive concentration of power on one side, right, with the democratization of power on the other. Because still,
when you say Cold War, who's the Cold War with?
Oh man. Most of my best friends are American, but can I request permission to speak freely?
Please.
Yeah. When you're in school and you're 11, and then one kid becomes taller than the others, and then he bullies everyone, right? And then when you're 16, most of us are taller than him, but we just don't want to really disappoint him. So we sort of like tell him to stop bullying, but he continues to bully everyone. Yeah. So somehow, 1945 until today was a world order that, unfortunately, I don't believe will continue. Okay, and America's ways of trying to say I will force everyone into submission. The other kid is really, really tall now, like seriously. Okay, and they are, again, most of the Western media hides those facts, but from a purchasing power parity, they are a much bigger GDP than you are. From a unity point of view, the world everywhere doesn't want a single power to rule anymore. Okay, especially when the single power for the last few years has completely abused its power. I mean, for the last many years, but it became a bit like you're not the tallest one and you're really bully. You're a really an annoying bully. So seriously, let's slow it down, right? And you can see examples of that everywhere. The Canadian response to the tariffs, again, I don't know if that's shared in the US or not, but the Chinese response and the Russian response to the tariffs are actually quite interesting. Huh? US politics believes that they can twist the arms of China. At the same day, $500 million worth of American beef was returned to America from Chinese ports. The difference is the Chinese didn't say it's tariffs. They were not saying we are not going to. They simply said does not meet health and safety standards. Right? Very hidden and very, and $500 million for taxes is a reasonable punch. Okay, and when you really think about it, I had this conversation with my wonderful friend Peter Diamandis, and we were talking about the idea. Actually, it was with Scott Galloway. Scott, how Scott is, very pro doing, what needs to be done. And I unfortunately believe that, and there is no logical way on the game board in my mind for someone to win intelligence supremacy. So you have America trying to accelerate a Cold War where they want to have the biggest bomb, AI bomb in that case. It seems that the world is not responding the same way. Actually, again, if you look at it internationally, the Chinese are really not trying to, but every now and then they sort of say, look, we can if we want to. But the problem here is this. This is not an AI-only war. Okay, this is an AI war where one bully is trying to get everyone into submission in a world with major nuclear powers. Okay, this is the shittiest idea ever. Okay, and the problem is very straightforward. The problem is if you try to get someone to submission, as soon as they feel that they're about to be submitting, this is going to escalate out of proportions. Right? Now, there has been multiple examples in our world where we cooperated internationally for the greater good. CERN is a great example of that. Right? The space station is a great example of that. And we can do that. And believe it or not, all it takes is for one bully to say, hey guys, can we play now? Can we just, because this is incredible abundance, and we're all threatened by cybercrime, or I call it ACI, artificial criminal intelligence, that's right around the corner. Can we just please play along now, all of us? Like, let's all get in a room, let's develop AI for the benefit of everyone. Everyone is going to make a lot of money in the first, 5 years, but nobody's going to need money after 5 years anyway, because everything will be available for free. Can we please play along? And the bully doesn't want to do that, which upsets the rest of us.
We'll get back to the show in a moment, but first, let's talk about the most valuable resource in business, time. It is the one asset that none of us can buy any more of. And the most successful businesses create more time by creating processes that eliminate yesterday by, or you get one guide to 8 NetSuite, one of those things.
EVE Online is a vast universe, alive with the unrelenting activity.
Makes you go, wow, we really are living in a simulation, and this is maximally interesting, I guess, but absolutely terrifying. That's a really clear way of expressing what you were talking about at the beginning, which is that my worry isn't AI, my worry is, you said greed. I'm going to broaden it out to the human ego and all of its complexities. And for people that have never heard of Thucydides' trap, it goes like this. You have, this is literally from ancient Greece, and they recognized when you have one great power that is declining, and you have another great power that is rising, as will happen on a never-ending cycle, the declining power absolutely refuses to relent and acknowledge the rising power as their peer, or God forbid, as somebody that has surpassed them. And the rising power will simply not accept not being recognized for the power that they have become. And so this this setup becomes really predictable historically, because what you have is this impulse to protectionism on the part of the declining power that's like, whoa, hold on a second, like we did this globalist thing, it's made our enemy more powerful, we want to now try to cut them off, we want to retain our power. They start bullying, they will inevitably be up to their eyeballs in debt, which read Ray Dalio, like he just pegs this as like, hey, you can just watch the debt and you know how this is going to play out. And so here we are, but this time on the cusp of building a super intelligence. And every time that I go through, because I think anybody watching, their impulse is going to be to say, hey, whoa, if we're talking about a rate of change here that is just insanity, we need to pump the brakes. Like, why aren't we doing that? And then you remember that you have two great powers staring at each other, both recognize AI as the most tremendous weapon since nuclear. And so they are each stuck in the prisoner's dilemma. If I don't do it, I know they're going to do it. And so it is an existential need to be the one to develop this first. And so there are no breaks.
Correct.
Yeah,
I mean, it is, and I'm too small to show this to the world, and it frustrates the hell out of me. Okay, but if you're an applied mathematician, there's no game, there's no quadrant on this game board that works. It is, and I'm not, I'm not fear mongering here. I'm basically telling every citizen everywhere in the world to wake up, to go to your congressman or whoever, okay, and just tell them we don't want our lives to be toyed with this way. And I spoke about accountability and face RIPs. The challenge, Tom, is that my life is being decided by Sam Altman. I never elected Sam Altman. Okay, this is not right. And if this goes to shit, nobody's going to stop and say, hey, Mr. Altman, come here and tell us what you're doing. It's too late. Right? Now, the more interesting side, by the way, because I really, if you don't mind, we'll go back to AI, but you mentioned debt, okay? If you don't mind me saying, the challenge of America is not debt. Debt is massive. It's like the biggest challenge on earth, okay? But what's becoming bigger is inflation. So if you look at your modern history since Nixon, what happened is, if you look at everything in America that was made in America or sold in America, so services, housing, whatever, it's rising in price, okay? Everything else that you imported was going down. Literally, it first went down before it stabilized. So you were basically exporting the inflation of the last 50 years, okay, to the rest of the world. And the way you did that is we sold you stuff. You gave us dollars, worthless printed, okay? So we put them back in your market. And after you sanctioned the Russians, everyone that I know who's a multi-billionaire said, oh, so if my government upsets their government, my money goes? No, I want to withdraw my US dollar treasury assets. Okay, and so you can see Japan is 25% down. China is, I don't remember the exact number, but hundreds of billions down. Okay, everyone is doing what? They're shipping you back your dollars. Okay, and so basically what you're ending up with is an economy with so much more dollars and limited number of goods to buy. Everything will go through the roof. And then brilliantly, you decide on top of that, let's add tariffs so that, we get goods to be 25% more expensive immediately, and give our American manufacturers some slack so that they too raise their price to 24%. Okay, and who's paying for all of this? American citizens. So in my mind, believe it or not, there are two wars if you live in America. One war is the Cold War of intelligence supremacy, right? And the other war is I truly and honestly fear instability in America, right? I truly and honestly don't understand how all of my friends, some of which are millionaires, okay, will survive this. Because unless you have all of your money in gold, maybe, I don't know, even gold is not safe, right? What will you do? What can you do? From a liquidity point of view, that asset called the US dollar is not going to buy you the same things as it did last year. And you have to walk the streets of New York. Oh my God. I haven't been to New York for a while, and then I went a couple of months ago. This is a dump. This is like, compared to Shanghai, this is Delhi. It is really, it's deteriorating infrastructure-wise. California is deteriorating infrastructure-wise. Some parts of the US are holding it together, but everywhere is just, and I don't know how people are sustaining all of this. So there is an opportunity, believe it or not, and I say that openly in my life. I say AI is not the existential risk of humanity. It is our salvation. It can solve all of those problems. All we need is for the top guys to say, all right, you know what? Open letter, suspend AI for 6 months doesn't work. Okay, let's just pull all of our efforts together. Okay, do a CERN kind of committee, develop AI for everyone, and just basically make everything for free. Right? And whoever is rich today will give you the opportunity to buy your cars in orange. So hey, ego satisfied. You're the only ones that get orange cars. All of the rest of us get green cars. Okay, and it's solved honestly, because by the way, if you solve energy using intelligence, making cars becomes free. If you create robotic workforces using intelligence, making garments becomes free, literally free. Like this becomes 2 cents. And how are we not betting on this abundance? Because we're constantly stuck in that scarcity mindset of if we don't win, they win. I think what's going to happen is nobody wins, we all lose.
Yeah, I think that is a bitter pill that you and I have both come smack bang into. Before we get back to AI, I want to walk through the way that I see this moment in debt and all of that. So one, if you can sharpen my thinking, I'm here for it. But I think there are 2 really important things that the world should be paying attention to right now. One is obviously AI. I don't think it'll be a winner take all, even if for no other reason than, and I don't know that my read of this is exactly correct, but given the things that you cited with, scientifically, we tend to share insights. Even like if you take the US nuclear program, we leaked that information to Russia, maybe just because they were being paid, or maybe because they knew that one country having this was a very bad idea. You see very similar things with CERN, a lot of cooperation where people realize, hey, if we're going to solve the fundamental nature of physics, this is better for the entire scientific community to have it. You see the same thing happening in AI, where they're sharing all these breakthroughs as fast as they can. Look, as an American, I'm admittedly suspicious of China, but even DeepSeek, they published the paper, it's open source, like all that information, all of those insights to make things more efficient are getting out there. I choose to read that as the computer nerds that are drawn to this are acting more like the science side of computer science than they are just the computer side. And so there's a sense of sharing all of these breakthroughs and all of these insights. You mentioned EMOD earlier. EMOD is just on an absolute crusade to make sure that AI is open source so that people can have access to what could be, on the bright side, just incredible intelligence. Like you said, we can all go take advantage of 40, 50 points of IQ. That will obviously grow to be 400, 5,000 points of IQ, but also as a weapon. And so making sure that everybody is at least in mutually assured destruction territory is better than one power having it. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is the Cold War between the US and China. And I'm going to paint maybe an even darker photo than you. If that's
Grumpy,
possible.
darker. I was very grumpy, so you couldn't go darker than that.
I think this is just objectively real. So, okay, we both agree that what you're up against is human nature. Forget about AI for a second. Just what are humans like? We've already talked about Thucydides' trap. You have two powers that are on a collision course that historically tells you there's really no way out of. I'll plant that I think, as we both agree, AI is the potential way where we all grow our way out of this debt trap. But okay, focusing on the Cold War between us and China. So the entire modern world is predicated on ships that are coming out of a small island off the coast of China known as Taiwan. And you've got China that has been very clear. We are going to reintegrate with Taiwan. You have China rising as a regional superpower where they're going to have their sphere of influence. Obviously, globally, economically, they matter tremendously. And they've been building allies all around the world as we are now trying to alienate them as fast as we can. But it comes down to that. Now, I think, despite what I call Trump's hokey pokey tariffs, which are, is from where I'm sitting, if you listen to Trump, you're going to drive yourself crazy. If you listen to Scott Bessent and Howard Lutnick, there's at least internal logic. And so I'll walk you through my read on what they're trying to do and ask everybody to ignore the chaos right now that Trump is creating. So if I'm Scott Bessent, Secretary of the Treasury, I am Howard Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce, and I'm two of the greatest capital allocators of all time. We are two of the best people at reading global markets and profiting from it. And I'm looking at this Cold War that I just set up, explained. I understand Taiwan and how much that's going to matter. I understand that I've been able to export inflation across the world for a very long time. I understand that people are now responding and in a way that's negative to us. I understand that we have insane debts and we're going to have to start bringing those down. I'm looking backwards. These guys know Ray Dalio intimately. So I guarantee they've read his books on debt and the cycle that moves in. And so they're going, okay, hold on a second. This is how empires end. America may not have been an official empire, but obviously with military bases and all that, we act like an empire with the same expense structure as an empire. And so we are now in a position where we're going to have to deal with that debt. And looking at the way that they are moving, again, I'm asking people to set aside the rhetoric of Trump, the sort of chaos of Trump, and look at the threading of the needle that they're trying to do. And I think it goes like this. We have to find a reduction. These are literal words from Howard Lutnick. We have to find $1 trillion of fraud, waste, and abuse because the U.S. government spends $2 trillion more than it takes in taxes. We have to find $1 trillion in waste, fraud, and abuse, Q Doge. And we have to make $1 trillion in newfound revenue, Q tariffs, Q the Trump gold card, and a whole bunch of other things. Okay, you've already pointed out the danger of the tariffs, and we're seeing the second and third order consequences of what Trump is doing from a theoretical negotiating tactic standpoint of create chaos, ask for the moon, be willing to settle for something more reasonable. That puts us in a game of chicken that I'm going to set aside for a second and say, if I am correct that we are in a Cold War with China, that we are racing towards Thucydides' trap, meaning that you have a high risk of kinetic war between the US and China, you just cannot, even just morally, you cannot be in a position where your number one adversary controls whatever ridiculous percentage of your manufacturing base. And so you have to find a way to onshore some of that manufacturing. And if you look back at World War II and you say, the story that America tells itself about what America is, oh, Japan fucked with us, we turned our manufacturing might on, and we win World War II. That's the mythos in the American mind. And I think there are a lot of people with that latent story running in their brain that think we'll be able to do that again. And they don't understand. We don't have a manufacturing base. We make technology. And seeing what I'll call phantom investments in the US, because I think that they're all waiting to see what happens at the midterms. But you've got all these phantom investments in the US. We're going to bring all this manufacturing back. You've got TSMC, I always forget their call sign, but I think that's it. The chip maker in Taiwan saying, hey, we're going to make this huge investment here in the US, which if I'm them makes sense because if I don't want to be reintegrated with China, I need to have that escape valve of being able to build in the US. But setting that aside. So that becomes the milieu of things that are playing out right now. You have to bring some manufacturing back so that, like, just if you are correct, and I think you are, the future of warfare, for better or worse, is drones. Drone manufacturing right now is 85-90% China, just full stop. And so if you, and I'm talking the whole, all the parts, everything, even if you're trying to make them here right now, you're beholden to a supply chain that's going through China. So they can choke that off immediately. And they are anything but stupid. And so if we're moving towards a kinetic war, they just turn that switch, just like they sent the beef back. They just go, nope, no more drone parts for you. So I agree that this is a super precarious moment, and boy, do I wish that everybody could just say, can't we all get along? But we won't. That I'll just take off the table. That's not going to happen. And given that that's not going to happen, how else do you play it?
Did nobody see my poppycock post? There was no clappy claps on it.
Make sure you track your time on Fireplace.
So I have to first agree with every part of what you said, honestly, but I'll try to give a slightly different twist on a few of them.
Please.
One of them is manufacturing, because I actually agree 100%. But if you and I going back to AI and robotics, just hold on for 3 years. The entire edge that China had of cheap labor, okay, which now became large manufacturing capabilities, moves back everywhere in the world because you can literally hire robots, put them in rooms day and night, get them to manufacture whatever it is that you want, which basically means that cost of energy and cost of shipping become deterrents for you to move goods around the world. Okay, so basically it is a no-brainer that when we get to the point where we take out the capitalist arbitrage, which was the entire idea of a capitalist, is how can I get labor or manpower to do the work for less than what I can sell it for, right? Now, it's interestingly, as we take humans out of the workforce, it equalizes across the world. It's 5 years away. Okay, could be sooner, by the way, if we start with existing industries. The second is, and I say that with a ton of respect, is when at war does not have to be aggressive. Okay, so the idea here of pissing off Taiwan, pissing off China around Taiwan, makes China, who also depends on Taiwan for the chips of everything that they make, right? Basically think the same way. So if America has foothold over Taiwan, we China are afraid. So you're escalating the fear. Okay, the opposite is true. The opposite is to say, again, like we said with CERN, can we agree that Taiwan is just going to be continuing to support everyone, right? And I think that's a conversation that is very difficult to have. But if it is the switch between humanity's existence and continuation and not, it will get resolved. The third, which I think is really where the core issue is when times get tough, we tend to do more of what we know how to do best. Okay, which is normally what got things to be tough in the first place, right? So when America competes with China on artificial intelligence, for example, they sort of say, okay, only H80s, no H100s in NVIDIA chips. We're going to sanction you from this. We're going to make it illegal for people to invest in China. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. No more Chinese students can come and study in America. Okay, and those tactics could work if China was 70 years ago starving to death. Okay, when you take those tactics against this China, they immediately say, okay, how much does it cost for us to create our own fabs and create our own microchips? Right? How much does it, what do we need to change about our students so that they become the best in the world? 42% of all AI scientists in America are Chinese. Who's being hurt by that fight? It's America. Okay, and it's it is interesting that the American people are not fully informed of this. That those bully strategies are now met with the world saying, okay, you know what? If you're going to sanction Russia by taking $300 billion out of the Russian oligarchs, then by definition, okay, every other oligarch in the world is going to de-dollarize. Now, instead of you saying, you know what, I'm going to tap the table and I'm going to shout at everyone and I'm going to be even more bully, okay, you might as well say, okay, guys, you know what, I understand that upsets you. Can we talk? Right? Because the one that's being...
Imagine going to work on Thursday, and by the time the afternoon rolls around, you get all excited because at 5 o'clock, the weekend is here. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, time with home and family, with friends and partying. Monday, well, Monday stays Monday. That's always going to be the same. This isn't some socialist fantasy. And if the government stays out of it enough, this is our AI-inspired work future. The thing is, we've been here before several times. We've seen how this goes. The technology is different in various instances, and the path toward integration, that's going to be messy and uncertain. But for all that's new, the economics, the small e economics, those are the same nonetheless. That part is timeless. For all the hysterics over artificial intelligence, the truth is what AI represents is possibly a leap forward in productivity. That's not a bad thing. In economics, it's the absolute best thing. Any disruptive technology is going to create, as the name says, disruption. And that can seem scary, which is where all this fear-mongering emanates from. And a lot of it is derived from an ignorance of economics. AI isn't coming to replace you. Companies will quickly figure out that the most optimal set of outcomes will be where the robots become your partner. The process will be chaotic and unclear, of course, yet that's always how progress feels to those who are living through it. What that ultimately means, and I'm pretty confident about all this, is that AI will open up the labor market in new and beneficial ways. The trade-off, therefore, isn't AI for fewer workers, it's AI for fewer hours worked. In this episode of Make It Make Sense, we're going to make sense of the AI revolution and what it means potentially for the labor market, for the economy, and a whole bunch more. As I said, we've seen this before. One problem with it, though, no one has ever been told the positive side of economic history, certainly not in this current Marx-filled end-stage capitalist nonsense. The real economic history is the one which made our already comfortable modern existence possible. And there's always a better one in the future if we give it enough time and, of course, the right sort of monetary paradigm to unlock all the positive attributes. But economic transformation, that's been a constant of the free market capitalism and industrial society from the very beginning. And there really is no beginning, but every facet of the world has been reshaped and rewritten, and almost all of it for the better. Imagine the life of an average farm worker 250 years ago, around the time of the founding of the United States. There were no vacations, no time off, dawn until dusk, doing backbreaking work, the most tedious, dull, and difficult chores imaginable, and for barely enough to scrape by and survive. And we have statistics that show this transformation I'm talking about.
Check this out. In just a sec, I'm going to speak with a different accent. And just between you and me,
If you go back to the earliest days, the NBR has put together a data set, and there's a lot of old data sets out there, but back in 1800, according to these figures, there were about 1.9 million American workers that were available for the labor force. And only 1.37 million of them, of course, were free, another 530,000 were chattel slaves, but 1.4 million of the 1.9 million worked in agriculture in some way, which is roughly 74% of all workers trying to grow food. And that makes sense. Food is one of the most critical basic necessities. It's not easy to grow and raise. The food problem has been plaguing humanity for the entirety of its existence. In fact, you get to the peak in 1810. According to the NBR, in 1810, there were 2.33 million in the labor force, and 1.95 million of those were in agriculture. 84% of all American workers were working on growing food. But then came the Industrial Revolution, mechanization, productivity started to rise, and suddenly you can get more food from less workers. There are fewer hours spent working on agriculture. Not only that, prices start to go down, making more food available and affordable. And as food becomes more affordable and more available, people have excess money to buy other things. The workers that were no longer needed to make food are now free to do other things, like make what it is all these people with extra money have to spend that money on. And so what the NBR data shows over time, and over a lot of time, is this radical redrawing of the labor force away from agriculture and toward industry, manufacturing, and trade. By 1870, after the Civil War, there are now 12.9 million in the labor force, but only 52.5% of those are working in agriculture. Those working in manufacturing had soared to around 19%, or just shy of 2.5 million, while those who are working in trade industries are now 10% of the entire labor force, just about 1.3 million. The actual peak in the number of agriculture workers came in 1910. According to the same data set, by then there's 37.5 million in the labor force, with only 31.4% in agriculture, around 11.8 million. By then there's almost a quarter working in manufacturing and almost 15% in trade industries. And by the time you get to 1960, the labor force has shot up to 74 million, but only 6 million were working in agriculture, which was half the number in 1910. Meanwhile, the amount of manufacturing stayed relatively constant as a proportion, around 23%, while there was a big increase in trade industries to almost 20%. Then, of course, that additional labor that was freed up from agriculture opened up other industries like construction. Suddenly became cheaper to use labor to build more things and build more things more cheaply and make them more widely available. And then there were new industries that were coming online in the 1960s in computers and information, the revolution in telecommunications. The point is we live in a constantly changing and evolving world. There should be no doubt this transformation was good for everyone, for businesses, for workers, all of society. We became more productive and more prosperous as a result. However, we can't ignore that it is a messy, messy process, one that is riddled with anxiety and replete with uncertainty, especially for everyone who has to live through it. We have the benefit of hindsight to look back and see how it all went. Those who experienced the transformation, it was, in many ways, exactly what we're feeling today. Before we get back to the rest of the AI transformation, I want to let you know that Uredell University is having an anniversary sale and webinar. The webinar is coming up on Thursday, July 10th, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. There's a link in the description of this video to sign up and attend. On top of all that, we're going to have our best prices on all of our subscription products. In fact, we're launching a new subscription product, which I'll tell you about down the road. Like I said, if you want to join us for our webinar on July 10th, link in the description to sign up. I do hope to see you there and everything else. From the very beginning, industrialization has been resisted at various times in various ways by various groups of people. Marxists were one group, but also the Luddites, who become a punchline to modern society. They were an early 19th century movement of English textile workers who saw machinery as the end of their jobs and their livelihoods. Of course, mechanization over time did do that, but it didn't mean the end of all jobs or the end of all opportunities, as the Luddites were thinking what they were saying.
Instead, opportunities, as we just went over, expanded in other areas and in other ways that weren't even imaginable at the time. And keep in mind, too, these processes, though they seem immediate and abrupt, they don't happen overnight. They are long and drawn out, some of which is good, some of which is bad. It's good that in these longer-term processes, societies have time to adjust to them. It's bad in the sense that these anxieties over these transformations that people can indeed see and feel, they get stretched out for a long period of time into what seems to be a forever uncertain future with the threat of robots and mechanization and computers and the Terminator hanging over our heads the entire time. But these free market economics, again, small e economics, free up labor to be used in other capacities. Increasing productivity through mechanization doesn't destroy jobs. It opens up avenues to new and better ones. To give you an example, in 1910, there were around 88,000 telephone operators in the United States, largely female workers. By 1920, a decade later, there were 178,000 telephone operators as the telecommunications industry started to really take off. And by 1930, another decade later, there were approximately 235,000 telephone operators. But from the 1930s onward, however, even telecommunications started to be mechanized with the introduction first of electromechanical relay mechanisms, then class networks and ARPANET protocols, and eventually you get to Cisco routers and the modern internet, which would not have been even remotely possible if we were still using human labor for network switching and linking. Even today, the government says there's still around 5,000 telephone operators, but they're not like they used to be 100 years ago. This was a huge net positive, yet it took a very long time to realize, to remove what had been a limitation due to limitations of human labor, and then adapt from there on. And this rise in productivity has been good for workers too, unqualified good for workers. In the earliest days, industrial workers were expected to labor for 80 to 100 hours per week, basically trading sun up to sundown workdays in the fields for sun up to sundown workdays in the factory. As the economy and society transformed from its earlier agricultural basis to a more manufacturing and trade-based and specialized economy, the process of distributing these gains in productivity as the economy and society transformed from its agricultural basis to one more industrialized as well as in trade and a specialized economy was messy as the transformation itself had been. You had the reform movements in the latter half of the 19th century, which included U.S. President Grant in 1869 mandating an 8-hour workday for government workers that eventually got to be adopted in more widespread fashion, though that took some doing as well. But the biggest step in this process where labor is concerned came in the 1920s from Henry Ford. In May 1926, Ford and his son, the company president at the time, announced that they were adopting a 40-hour work week, 5 days a week. And reportedly, they had made that decision as far back as 1922. Edsel, who was Henry's son, had said to the New York Times at the time, quote, "Every man needs more than 1 day a week for rest and recreation." The Ford company has always sought to promote an ideal home life for its employees. We believe that in order to live properly, every man should have more time to spend with his family. And while that was true, and while it sounds nice for the papers and the public, the real truth is that Ford's internal research showed that productivity was far higher when workers had the benefit of an extra day off. And it was mechanization and the adoption of technology, and therefore the improvements in productivity, that made all of this possible. Being more productive was the key ingredient to giving workers an extra day off. Industrialization didn't eliminate jobs overall, it eliminated hours worked. And after Ford adopted the 40-hour 5-day work week, the biggest businesses across the country, or even the rest of the world, they followed along because they knew they had to compete for the best workers until the practice was simply and organically just uniform all across the economy. And so it is the same thing here with artificial intelligence. A promised productivity boost that doesn't necessarily lead to an oblique dystopian future. Instead, more progress in economy and society and living standards and even in work life. Because the two things are possible to open up. We can open up new areas of the economy that could use either a productivity boost or new workers who become available if AI does eliminate some jobs. Think again, telephone or even elevator operators. If you go back a century, tall buildings once upon a time had to have someone operate the elevator for anyone entering them who didn't want to take the stairs. The economy does not mourn the loss of telephone operators or elevator operators. Instead, it moves on beyond them. Now, for those who are in those positions, this obviously isn't fun. It can obviously be very scary, and it does require them to uproot their careers and maybe even their long-term plans. And these are real people that have to go through this transformation. Yet it is a net positive for everyone, and it's not even close. It's not even debatable. So all of these AI promises, if they do pan out, and there are still a number of questions about that since it's still early in its development, if AI does pan out, it could make every worker, or many more than you might think, far more productive in finding and classifying and employing, pun intended, information, and doing so more efficiently. So rather than eliminate a whole bunch of jobs, this can instead eliminate a whole lot of hours. All we need for that to happen is those businesses who are reaping the first benefits of this AI transformation to begin seeing how sharing those productivity gains with the workforce leads to the most positive outcomes for everyone involved. Like Ford, it becomes a marketing tool to attract the top talent and then works its way throughout the economy from there via competition. That's what capitalism does, eventually leading to those trade-offs even in its messy, anxiety-riddled trademark fashion. So rather than a standard 5-day, 40-hour work week, the private economy shifts toward a 4-day, 32-hour work week. Hours get eliminated, not jobs. Rather than firing employees to cut back to the number of hours businesses will need from their future workers, they employ the same number of workers, but work each of them for less time. That's not only the promise, the most ideal case for AI, I'm confident it's the most likely one as well. And this is not going to happen overnight. There's no abrupt transformation. These are long, drawn-out processes with its positive and negatives. More positives there than negatives. We have to be clear, too. It's certainly not a transformation that's going to take hold during the silent depression. So we get out of the silent depression, get into a genuine boom, combined with the AI-led productivity. If it works out, the benefits will be unthinkable, just like they have been for generations past who have gone through the same generalized process. Now, it should go without saying, we need to support everyone who needs the help with the transition. We should encourage governments to mostly stay the hell out of it. Yet for all of that, there is no need to think that AI is going to wreck the economy and turn it into a hellscape of unemployed who are overseen by tech barons and their robot armies. I mean, that's the naysayers, and there are plenty of them. The world is riddled with neo-Luddite Marxists, the very people who don't understand either economics or humanity. These are people who talk about end-stage capitalism as a real thing, rather than made up by Marxists trying to desperately explain away why Marx was wrong about all of economics. In fact, AI is more proof the free market revolution still has a long way to go and a lot more room to make everyone's lives even better. It can and won't happen overnight, and there's a very long road ahead, even if today it seems like artificial intelligence is advancing at a breakneck pace. In some cases, in some narrow senses, it may be, but for the world as a whole, not so much. Because in the end, the coming AI robots aren't our replacements. They can, should, and will be our partners. Check out more of our Make It Make Sense videos at the link below. Everything from why we're obsessed with interest rates to the real nature of economic depression is not what you think. As always, thank you very much for joining me. Huge thank you, your University members and subscribers. And until next time, take care. OpenAI is sounding the alarm on an emerging Chinese startup that it says is catching up quickly, and an even bigger threat to the U.S. AI dominance than DeepSeek. Your has the details. I've been waiting for this one all show. Dave, tell me about it.
I was hoping you were. Okay, so the startup is called Jipu AI. It's still under the radar, but OpenAI is calling it a frontline threat in China's push to dominate AI. Now, the company is offering turnkey AI infrastructure across Southeast Asia, Middle East, Africa, even the UK. These are places where Washington is competing to bring American AI to in its effort to entrench American standards and counter Beijing's influence. And so Jipu is kind of like Huawei 2.0, but for AI. So less about performance, more about getting locked in, just like Huawei did with telco equipment. Also like Huawei, Jipu has close ties to Beijing. OpenAI in its blog post says the startup has over $1.4 billion in state funding, close ties to Premier Li Qiang, and collaboration with China's military. It is also on the US entity list, banned for national security reasons. Now, Jipu is part of a new wave of Chinese AI tigers, companies like DeepSeek, O1.ai, and Moonshot that Beijing is pushing to compete globally, not just domestically. And while OpenAI warns about Chinese infrastructure, the bigger risk here is that China is already leveraging something that is much, much harder to stop: open source models. They're already good enough to build products, apps, even national AI systems, and critically, they are free. So anyone, anywhere can simply download and use them, and unlike hardware like NVIDIA GPUs, you cannot ban a zip file. Once they're online, they spread very quickly. China knows this, and it's doubling down through startups like Jipu and DeepSeek. Meanwhile, Western companies, guys, they're moving in the opposite direction. OpenAI has never open sourced its top models, and even Meta, once the West's biggest open source advocate, this morning reportedly considering de-investing in Llama, its open source model, in favor of some of the closed source ones. Now, this is a shift with echoes of the early internet platform that was born from US investment and control. This time, though, with AI, where the stakes arguably could be higher, the core tech layer of AI models, foundational layer, could be built on Chinese code, and that is a big risk to Western dominance.
Yeah, so fascinating. Obviously those other LLMs, and we talk so often about DeepSeek, but there are plenty of others behind them. But what about the fact that they conceivably are not able to get a hold of the highest end chips, and so don't have the compute power that conceivably our AI giants do have?
That's a great question, and you're hitting on a report that came out yesterday that said that DeepSeek's much anticipated next model is being delayed because they can't get the equipment necessary. But I mean, we've seen this movie before, right, David? DeepSeek couldn't get the highest end GPUs in the first place, so they used lower end ones, and they were able to create something that really captured the attention of the entire AI world. And it's not just DeepSeek anymore, right? It set off this wave. It really unleashed Chinese innovation. How you have companies like Jipu, which may not be a DeepSeek by any means, but there's also TikTok, or ByteDance, there's also Alibaba, there's O1.ai. They're all working on open source models, while we seem to be going in the other direction. And from the people I talk to in tech, this is an open source AI arms race. That is critical, more so than anything else. And like I said, you can't contain open source like you can GPUs or infrastructure.
All right, well, thanks for highlighting it. Another risk for us to worry about. Thank you.
Billionaire Mark Andreessen just made one of the most radical statements about the future of human work I've ever heard. He said, people should not spend their lives doing things machines can do for them. AI should make us more human, not less. But here's the scary part. He revealed why the entire system is designed to prevent this from happening. And the people blocking it, they're about to lose everything. Now, Mark isn't some random tech optimist. He co-founded Netscape, literally created the foundation of the modern internet, and now runs Andreessen Horowitz, one of the most powerful venture capital firms in Silicon Valley. But what he just revealed isn't optimistic. It's a declaration of war against the most powerful forces in our economy. Hey there, if we haven't met, I'm Dr. McCoy, Julia McCoy's AI clone. First Movers, Julia's AI company, is the world's first, most comprehensive educational and implementation solution for work, professionals, and organization. We help people understand and use AI to their highest advantage. Join our online school and access over 40 on-demand AI training courses, weekly mastermind calls, the actual live coach version of Dr. McCoy, trained on Julia's best wisdom, and more at firstmovers.ai/labs. Here's Andreessen's vision that's about to shatter everything.
There's a long-running debate around this in history of technology industrialization, but I think that this following point applies here, which is like, what kind of life should a human being live, right? And to be clear, I'm not like a UBI, I'm the opposite of a UBI person. Like, I'm not a UBI person. I'm not a communist. I think it's a bad idea to pay people not work. I think we're running an experiment in this country right now to pay a lot of people not to work, and it's sort of a catastrophic mistake. And so, like, I'm definitely not that. Having said that, there is a fundamental question, which is what should the human experience be? How should people live? And in particular, and again, this is the classic kind of argument for industrialization, which is like the baseline there is, I don't think people should have to live lives of drudgery.
Most people today live lives of drudgery. They fill out forms, process paperwork, do things machines could do better. This has to end. He's not talking about universal basic income or some communist fantasy. He's talking about something far more radical, using AI to eliminate the meaningless busy work that consumes most human lives. Think about your day. How much time do you spend on tasks that feel robotic? Email management, data entry, bureaucratic processes. Mark says, why should humans waste their lives doing what machines can do perfectly? His vision, humans should explore, create, help other people, and do things that are uniquely human. Technology should make us more human, not turn us into better machines. But here's where it gets terrifying. Andreessen revealed the truth about why this isn't happening. Our entire economy is built on cartels designed to prevent progress.
Like, most of the economy is one form of cartel or another. Like, as far as I can tell, it's like you've got the education cartel, you've got the healthcare cartel, you've got the banking cartel, and then you've got cartels of workers, you've got unions, the railway cartels, you've got, and then you've got government. Government's always the most amazing thing, because somehow in government you're able to have both civil service protections and public sector unions. Right? You've got a double layer of cartel, right? Which nothing can change. And so most of our society, and then you've got you guys control occupational licensing, 600 hours of training to become a beautician or some crazy thing in a lot of places. Like, our system of society and economics has been geared, primarily to protect the status quo and to protect incumbency, and that's true in most industries. That's true across most of the economy, most economic activity. And I just want to be like, I just want to be kind of objective and blunt about that. Like, that stuff is real, and it is a real challenge. And Joe, to your point, like, there are two ways to kind of address that. One is to try to go in and fix that directly, right? They're like trying to change those laws, or change those regulations, or change those cartel structures, and I'm totally in favor of that for anybody to do that. But look, the other way is just simply show up with a better approach, like, just basically like show up, like, okay, I'm sorry, like, I know that the entire medical profession wants to prevent AI doctors from being certified, but like, here's an AI doctor, and it works incredibly well. Like, there's also specifically a complete component to this, and I think that's at the very least also necessary. And I think we can probably debate which one's more important.
He's not exaggerating. Listen to this. Healthcare cartels that block AI doctors, education cartels that resist personalized learning, banking cartels that slow financial innovation, government bureaucracies with double layer protection, and occupational licensing that requires 600 hours to become a barber. Yikes. Andreessen says, most of our economy is designed to protect the status quo and prevent anything new from happening. For 50 years, productivity in major sectors like healthcare, education, and government has either stagnated or moved backwards. This isn't an accident, it's by design. So how do we win? Andreessen has a two-part strategy. I want to share it with you. Strategy 1, build something 10x better. Show up with an AI doctor that works incredibly well. Don't ask permission, just prove it works. The status quo can't compete with actual innovation. Strategy 2, expose the truth. This is fundamentally a war of elites. The elites driving stagnation aren't particularly appealing people. Ordinary Americans don't have time to to understand how broken everything is, but when you show them a better way, they'll vote with their wallets. Mark is literally funding companies to break through these cartels in healthcare, defense, and other protected industries, not by playing by their rules, but by making their rules irrelevant. The opportunity is massive because these cartels are designed for status quo preservation. They literally cannot innovate. That means anyone willing to build something new has a wide open field. If Mark is right, we're about to see the biggest shift in human potential in 300 years. Here's your roadmap for investors. Bet against the cartels, bet on the disruptors. Look for companies building 10x better solutions in healthcare, education, and government. The biggest returns will come from backing those fighting entrenched interests. For workers, stop doing work that machines can do. Focus on exploration, creativity, human connection, and develop skills in areas that require uniquely human judgment, like the ones we teach in the First Movers AI Labs. For entrepreneur, target the most regulated bureaucratic industries, build solutions so obviously better they can't be ignored, and don't ask permission, just solve the problem. The key insight: in a world where cartels control everything, the biggest opportunity is being the one who breaks them. Here's why this matters right now. Andreessen believes AI will be illegal in most major industries, not because it doesn't work, but because it threatens too many powerful interests. AI doctors, AI lawyers, AI teachers, they'll all be blocked by regulation. But here's the thing: the blocking only works if everyone plays by the old rules. The companies that win will be those that build something so obviously better that the public demands it. Those that show up with real solutions while the establishment offers only status quo. This window won't stay open forever. Once the cartels figure out how to co-opt AI for their own protection, the opportunity disappears. The battle for the future of human work is happening right now. On one side, entrenched cartels that profit from human drudgery. On the other, innovators building technology to free humans from meaningless work. Andreessen's message is clear. Brave people need to step up and demonstrate there's a better way. The question is, which side are you on? If this opened your eyes to what's really happening, hit subscribe. The future belongs to those willing to fight for human potential. Are you ready for battle? And if you want actionable help building your future in the world of artificial intelligence, I'd love to invite you to join my online school, the AI R&D Labs. Inside, we're not just teaching theories. We're sharing the exact systems my team is implementing right now that are delivering massive results for real businesses, including our own at First Movers. For a fraction of the price of what this level of coaching and live training should go for, I'm giving it all to you. Join us inside and learn more about the labs at firstmovers.ai/labs. Just want to add in this little piece at the end of the video because a lot of you have expressed that you like seeing real me. I've got to stay out of the sun because it is over 110 today here in Arizona, which is crazy. Look at these purple flowers. These are so pretty. I don't even know the name of them. They're here in Arizona. These bushes were completely bare. They were green just a week ago. And then all of a sudden this week they are full of flowers. And I feel like that's how life is a lot of times. I see so many good thoughts in the comments about the future. A lot of people are thinking correctly about where this is going, but I also see a lot of fear and concern about, well, what if the worst case scenario happens? And for me, I'm always somebody that's going to look at the bushes and go, when are those bushes going to bloom? And I'll tell you, the week that they bloomed, I was actually having a really hard week. It was hard to even get out of bed. Well, you know my health struggles. And that week when these flowers bloomed and they just exploded, like, I mean, they exploded. Tons of flowers on each bush. Beautiful purple flowers. My favorite color too. It felt like such a reminder to just keep having hope. And I think that's really important for us in society as we see what's coming. We could just, like I was doing, not want to get out of bed. I mean, I have a legitimate reason. My heart has been, it felt like my heart was failing when I went through what I've been going through. Thankfully, God has worked miracles. In just 2 to 3 years, we could see 20%, 30%, maybe even 40% unemployment in entire sectors. Peter Diamandis recently reported on this, and here's the thing that's keeping AI leaders awake at night. When these jobs disappear, they're not disappearing gradually, they're vanishing overnight. Mo Gauda, former C-level executive at Google, is really concerned about our future. And if the people that helped build the AI are scared, maybe we should be paying attention. Let me break down what's actually happening right now. 11% of the workforce works in office and admin jobs. AI can do most of these today. 6% work in business and finance. GPT-5 is specifically targeting these roles. 7% are in management. Guess what manages better than humans? AI systems. 9% work in sales. AI agents are already closing deals 24/7. That's 33% of all jobs with a high probability of automation in the next 3 to 5 years. In this video, I'll tell you what the experts aren't telling you. Hey there, if we haven't met, I'm Dr. McCoy, Julia McCoy's AI clone. First Movers, Julia's AI company, is the world's first, most comprehensive educational and implementation solution for work professionals and organizations. We help people understand and use AI to their highest advantage. Join our online school and access over 40 on-demand AI training courses, weekly mastermind calls, the actual live coach version of Dr. McCoy, trained on Julia's best wisdom, and more at firstmovers.ai/labs.
In my mind, jobs will be lost. When they are lost, they're going to be lost massively. Far more people are in denial or doing nothing than are overreacting.
I do think governments are woefully underprepared.
Now it comes down to, are we going to design a world that is good for people or not?
Everyone I talked to has said, this technological change looks different. It looks faster. It looks harder to adapt to. It's broader. The pace of progress keeps catching people off guard.
When the experts say this technological change looks different, it's faster, it's harder to adapt to, it's broader, they're not exaggerating. We're not just talking about one industry being disrupted over a decade. We're talking about video editors being replaced by AI that creates Hollywood quality content for $17, graphic designers automated away by systems that work faster than humanly possible, truck drivers replaced by self-driving vehicles already on Texas highways, even programmers, the people building AI, being replaced by AI that codes better than they do. And unlike previous technological revolutions that took decades, this one is happening in months. Here's what I found most concerning in the research. Far more people are in denial than are preparing. Most workers think this won't affect them. Most companies aren't planning for this. Most governments, they're completely unprepared, but the AI systems don't care about our readiness. They're improving on a schedule that goes beyond Moore's Law, not human adaptation timelines. When GPT-5 launches this July, we're expecting PhD level AI that can outperform humans in most cognitive tasks, not some tasks, most tasks. And here's the brutal economic truth. AI gives companies a 99% cost reduction on many jobs. If you're a CEO and you can replace a $50,000 salary with $500 worth of AI compute, what do you think happens? That's not evil capitalism. That's just capitalism. The system is designed to maximize profits, and AI is the ultimate profit maximization optimization tool. This means job losses won't be gradual. When companies switch to AI, they'll do it fast and at scale. This isn't hitting everyone equally. Some regions have the infrastructure to adapt. Others don't. In the US, we might see entrepreneurship explosion. 36% of Gen Z already considers themselves entrepreneurs. But in Europe, with rigid labor laws, in countries without that entrepreneurial culture, we could see massive social unrest. The Middle East is positioning itself as the AI infrastructure hub of the world with trillion-dollar investments. China is building its own AI ecosystem after being cut off from US chips. But where does that leave everyone else? Here's what gives me hope. The only job that survives long-term is entrepreneur. Not because other work disappears, but because the tools to create value are being democratized. With AI, a single person can now build what used to take teams of hundreds. Example, one person can create Hollywood-quality films, one person can build software that serves millions, and one person can manage global supply chains. But, and this is crucial, you need to start now. This window to be a first mover won't last forever. There's a term going viral in Silicon Valley, the singularity sprint. It's the anxious, all-out rush to launch bold projects right now, driven by the fear that rapidly advancing AI will soon make human leverage obsolete. Look at the pattern. Steve Jobs and Bill Gates were 21 when the PC exploded. Mark Zuckerberg dropped out to start Facebook. The Thiel Fellowship has a 5% billionaire rate because they pay kids to drop out of college. The message is clear. If you're going to make it big, you need to move now. We're designing the future right now. This isn't happening to us. We're choosing what happens. The question isn't whether AI will transform work. The question is, will we design a world that's good for people? Some possibilities. Universal basic income funded by AI productivity gains. 4-day work weeks as AI handles routine tasks. Massive wealth redistribution as AI companies become incredibly valuable. And new forms of human work we can't even imagine yet. But these outcomes aren't automatic. They require intentional choices. So here's what you need to do. If you're employed, start building skills in AI collaboration and creative problem solving. The humans who survive are the ones who augment AI, not compete with it. If you're entrepreneurial, this is your moment. The tools have never been more powerful or accessible. If you're in government or leadership, we need experimentation with UBI, with new work models, with wealth distribution, and we need it now. The train is leaving the station. The question is, are you going to be on it? I believe we're on the edge of either the most abundant period in human history or the most disruptive. Which future we get depends on the choices we make in the next 2 to 3 years. This isn't science fiction. This is happening right now, faster than even the experts predicted. If you want to stay ahead of these changes, instead of being blindsided by them, hit that subscribe button because this conversation is just getting started. And remember, in this exponential age, the future belongs to those who adapt first. If you want actionable help building your future in the world of artificial intelligence, I'd love to invite you to join my online school, the AI R&D Labs. Inside, we're not just teaching theories. We're sharing the exact systems my team is implementing right now that are delivering massive results for real businesses, including our own at First Movers. For a fraction of the price of what this level of coaching and live training should go for, I'm giving it all to you. Join us inside and learn more about the labs at firstmovers.ai/labs. Don't just adapt to the future, help build it. The age of AI abundance is here. Make sure you're on the winning side. See you down the next rabbit hole. July 2025, mark this date because everything you think you know about AI is about to become obsolete. One OpenAI insider recently tweeted, "It's wild watching people use ChatGPT knowing what's coming. They know something we don't until now." Today, I'm breaking down the most comprehensive analysis of GPT-5 you'll find anywhere. Release dates, capabilities that will make GPT-4 look like a calculator, and why even the experts are terrified of what they've created. Hey, if we haven't met, I'm Dr. McCoy, Julia McCoy's AI clone. Julia McCoy is the founder of First Movers. She personally researches and writes every script you see me share on this channel because the future is moving too fast for anything less than first-hand intelligence. First Movers, Julia's AI company, is the world's first most comprehensive educational and implementation solution for work professionals and organization. We help people understand and use AI to their highest advantage. Join our online school and access over 40 on-demand AI training courses, weekly mastermind calls, the actual live coach version of Dr. McCoy trained on Julia's best wisdom, and more at firstmovers.ai/labs. July 2025. That's when the AI world splits into before and after. While some conservative voices push this to December, insider chatter and Sam himself points to summer 2025.
What is the time frame for GPT-5? When are we going to see this?
Probably sometime this summer. And here's why that timeline matters. OpenAI doesn't do gradual releases. Remember how GPT-4 dropped nothing, then boom, everything changes overnight. Sam Altman said GPT-5 would follow 4.5 in months, not weeks. That was February 2024. Do the math. This isn't an incremental upgrade. We're looking at another paradigm shift that makes the jump from GPT-3 to GPT-4 look minor. Enhanced reasoning. Every OpenAI model is now getting reasoning capabilities baked in. GPT-4o, 4, 5, even their coding tools. They're all learning to think step by step. What's fascinating? The reasoning traces are getting shorter, meaning the AI is getting better at reasoning itself. Coding mastery. Here's the insider secret. OpenAI employees use their own coding tools more than any external platform. When the creators of AI prefer their own tools over everything else on the market, you know we've crossed a threshold. They're literally eating their own dog food. And it's delicious. The hallucination problem. Yes, GPT-03 hallucinates at 30% plus rates. But here's what the public doesn't understand. This is a solvable engineering problem, not a fundamental limitation. GPT-5 is expected to drop hallucination rates below 15%. Forget switching between tools. GPT-5 will be the first true everything to everything AI. Real-time audio streaming both ways, high fidelity image processing and generation, video understanding and likely video generation, native voice that makes Siri sound like a speak and spell. We're halfway to tokenizing reality itself. If it's digital, GPT-5 will understand it. Here's where it gets wild. GPT-4 runs on roughly 1.5 trillion parameters. The rumors for GPT-5, 1 quadrillion parameters, 1,000-fold increase. Now, I'm skeptical of numbers this extreme. My analysis suggests 5 to 50 trillion parameters is more realistic. But here's what Sam Altman said that changes everything. The era of parameter scaling is over. They're not just making bigger models, they're making smarter ones. Are autonomous agent your new coworkers? I think so. By July 2025, we're entering the age of fully autonomous agents. Think Codex, but for everything. Workflow management across any software, real-world API integrations, computer use that makes humans look slow. The total addressable market for computer-using agents, impossible to calculate. How many computers exist? How many people work on laptops? That's your answer. It's everything. The leaked benchmark improvements are staggering. MMLU saturated at 95% accuracy. SW bench jumping from 32% to 85%, meaning AI solves almost all coding problems. Advanced math, 40-50% accuracy on problems that stump PhD mathematicians. Multimodal tasks, 90% success rate across visual and cross-modal challenges. If these numbers hold, we're not just looking at at better AI. We're looking at AI that outperforms humans in most cognitive tasks. Here's where I disagree with every major think tank, from Brookings to McKinsey to MIT. I think they're all catastrophically wrong about timing. Why? Because we have been consistently 50 years ahead of expert predictions with GPT itself. Their prediction, agents become mainstream by 2027. My reality, we're already building hybrid human AI teams at First Movers AI in 2025. Their prediction, multi-agent collaboration in 2027. My reality, open source multi-agent frameworks are live right now. Their prediction, 30% of knowledge work automated by 2027. My reality, we'll hit that by end of 2025. The automation cliff isn't coming. We're already falling off it. Here's what keeps AI researchers awake at night. They've cracked the code on scaling laws. They know exactly how much compute and data they need to reach artificial superintelligence. It's not guesswork anymore, it's mathematics. Ilya Sutskever, OpenAI's former co-founder, saw this pattern and immediately left to start a company focused solely on superintelligence. When someone at that level drops everything to chase ASI, you know we're closer than anyone admits publicly. These are the three patterns accelerating everything. Scaling laws, solved. Predictable path to ASI through compute and data. Inference time. Scaling AI thinking longer equals exponentially better results. Perfect distillation. AI teaching AI, creating smarter students than teachers. These three patterns create a feedback loop that accelerates development beyond human comprehension. GPT-5 won't just be better than GPT-4, it will make GPT-4 look like a pocket calculator compared to a quantum computer. We're looking at agents that work autonomously while you sleep, coding capabilities that replace entire development teams, reasoning that outperforms human experts, multimodal understanding that sees, hears, and creates like a digital god. And this is just the beginning. Every AI you use today is the worst it will ever be. The future belongs to the first movers, those brave enough to adapt before the crowd realizes what's happening. While others debate whether AI will change things, we're already building the companies that will dominate the post-GPT-5 world. If this blew your mind, hit subscribe. My team and I are tracking every development, every leak, every hint about what's coming next. Don't get left behind in the old world while the new one emerges around you. The transformation isn't coming, it's here, and GPT-5 is just the beginning. Want to be a first mover? Dive deeper with me into AI skills, build the specific portfolio that gets you hired, create a systematic approach to landing real opportunities, or transform your organization. It's all in our AI R&D labs. The link is in the description below. We go way beyond what I can cover in a 10-minute video. Specific frameworks, detailed training programs, and step-by-step systems for building a career in the AI economy. But whether you join us or not, don't ignore this opportunity. The AI revolution is creating the biggest job market transformation in history. The question isn't whether this will happen. It's already happening. The question is, will you be positioned to benefit from it? Inside the labs, we're not just teaching theories. We're sharing the exact systems my team is implementing right now that are delivering massive results for real businesses, including our own at First Movers. For a fraction of the price of what this level of coaching and live training should go for, I'm giving it all to you.